Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Dude, UnSpun.
420. Dude, let's
420.
party. Let's
Let's go
party.
protest party. What is it again? What are we doing on 420 now? I'm a bit lost. Is it about magic mushrooms now? Or is it about
No,
what is it? Is it still
didn't you
about pot?
hear?
No, what?
It's a protest, George Affleck. 420 is a protest, and
Oh
they
yeah?
they don't go through the proper channels for permitting. They don't go through the city. They don't go through Park Board. They just go down to Sunset Beach and gather and set up
Mm-hmm.
tents and sell their wares without restriction in the name of protesting for, wait for it, affordability for those who can't afford the medicine.
Well, that's something. Something.
That's what it is.
I mean, I think it's really about, what do we, yeah, I think they're, I don't know. I mean, they got everything they wanted, but I think they're just a bit of a stretch now. To me, it should be a celebration, but that's certainly on a PR point of view. I guess that's an argument. Finding the niche within the niche, as far as what we need to deal with. I think there are the advocates that we've seen around for years are shifting a lot of their gears towards other products and protesting legalization of those. And as Canada moves towards legalization of other substances, I think we're certainly one of the most progressive countries in the world.
Or
Um,
decriminalization, at
yeah,
least, right?
well, yeah,
Yeah, that's
sure.
where we're
I
at
mean,
now.
marijuana is
I
not
mean,
decriminalized. It's like you can do
no, but when
whatever.
you said other drugs, I'm just to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
clear, we haven't. It's
So
not
yeah,
legalization of
no,
recreational, heroin at this point. It is decriminalization. Um, But what I
yeah.
will say about, I say it tongue in cheek with like the affordability, the government stores are making it too expensive for all people to access cannabis. Can you imagine if every worthy treatment, painkiller, drug
Mm-hmm.
needed anything, if there was a protest for each of those things that existed? Like, I just feel like, as you said, this is a stretch. Protesting, if you're walking around downtown Vancouver en masse like a parade to say we deserve
Mm-hmm.
access, we deserve, is different than setting up a basically a farmer's market without a
Yeah,
permit. Like you
yeah,
can't even have a lemonade
yeah.
stand without somebody coming at you. You can't move
Or
a
hot
food truck
dogs.
and right. Don't. That's twice
I
in a
love,
row
I
you've
love,
done that.
I love poking you on that one. Ooh, look at your camera. For those not watching, Jody has a fancy camera. She's making me look like a little lame-o here. Her camera moves where her body moves, so it's kind of like crazy. Her head moves no, not left, right. I'm getting a bit dizzy, Jody.
Sorry, I'll stay still. It's like my
No,
cameraman. It's my
your cam,
cameraman. It's my
your invisible cameraman. Nice.
so 420. Okay, opinions. Let's give our unspun opinions here. So clearly,
Yes.
we do not agree that this is a protest, and we will allow um the people who have been
Your
profiting.
point, yeah,
Let
your
me just
point
say
about the
they're
farmers market
profiting.
is perfect, though. That's dead on.
Thanks. They're profiting, and it's unregulated, and it's dangerous, and it costs tax dollars to police and to clean up after and to remediate. If it rains today, I don't know what, if it's raining right now,
Mm-hmm.
then you can imagine that party there is going to cause no end of damage to our beautiful spot on Sunset Beach. I would argue
Mm-hmm.
that, there are greater places to hold this, but they don't want to. The people that are going to, it has established itself. I predict, George Affleck, that this unsanctioned, unpermitted event will go on indefinitely. Does it bother me? No, it doesn't. Other than because I know I can't do anything about it. I've been mouthy about just like, hey guys, can we do this in a way that doesn't cost our park for a good chunk of spring
Well,
and
and I
early
think there's
summer?
parents out there whose 14-year-old kids can go down there and buy as much pot as they want without anybody asking any questions. And they may deny that at this event, but that's what happens. They buy
But you can
all
also
the
do that
things
on
they
the
need
art
that they
gallery
can't get at a
steps.
store. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
true. But it does, create a freedom that a lot of people have a problem with. So, and if you live down there,
yeah,
you can't breathe. If you live a block
right.
off that thing, it's like a waft of smoke. But I don't want to sound like an old fogey.
That's true.
I just think that it's an event, and they should follow all the same rules now as every other event in this city does. And perhaps with this new council and this new park board that we have, they certainly are talking about better events and making opening up things, and but certainly costing. I mean, the I would argue that their argument, which is a solid one, which every event in the city has, is the cost of policing is stratospheric. It's ridiculous. It's putting events out of business because the police costs and the add-on, plus, 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 plus. It just
Yeah.
makes it impossible to get the donors that you need to underwrite an event if you're out of the gate having to spend $100,000, $200,000 on policing for your one-day event. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense, and it's driving great events out of our city.
It's a non-starter for sure.
Mhm.
And I mean, I love the fact that the council and the mayor that the idea of expanding, as you and I have been talking about for 213 episodes, of responsible consumption of alcohol in parks and at beaches. And it looks like that is going to be year round, which I kind of laughed at, that it's like 38 places will be in the spring, summer, no, winter, fall, winter, and spring, and then but not in the summer, only 16 in the summer. It's like, sorry, we become far less responsible when it's sunny out. Like,
Yeah,
what?
sun makes me want to drink. That's true though, but it's all about
And
policing the responsibility, and let us grow up. Everybody, come on, we're
let's grow
adults
up.
here, and if people become, we've talked about this a million times, and it's always the
A million
argument, is
times.
if people get out of control, it's not a alcohol issue, it's a troublemaker issue.
People issue.
And
Yeah.
generally, when you have everybody accepting that there is alcohol permitted, families who come down, like I do with my kids, and we go down as a family, have a bottle of wine, we ride to Jericho, we'll have a nice picnic, you go with a bottle of wine, a couple of beers. Somebody next to me is like going out and getting under control, which I don't think I've ever seen. I know that there's been occasions somewhere in Jericho, and we certainly have seen during COVID there was some madness going on. But more of an issue to me on the beaches these days and in the parks is people smoking pot. I find it.
Yeah.
I used to hate cigarette smoke.
Intrusive.
Now that's all gone, and now it seems okay for people to smoke pot on every single. And I'm sitting there on the beach with my kids, or we're with friends, little kids, and there's pot wafting in their faces. I mean, that is, to me. And I don't want to. Again, I'm not like an old fart, but hey, you know what? We have smoking is not allowed in our parks, and that should include marijuana, but it doesn't seem, or pot, or what we're calling
Well,
it.
clearly with 420, I mean, taking us back to our last conversation, like
Yeah,
they're
no, but
literally in a park to smoke and smoke extra. And anyway, let's move on because there are a
yes,
long list of
yeah, a
things
lot
for
of
us to
stuff,
get
a
to.
lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the clearing, the decampment of the downtown east side, the removal of the
Mm-hmm.
tents from the sidewalks, as per the fire chief, Karen
Mm-hmm.
Fry, saying this is not safe. We need to remove these. Then there was the leaked heads up that the plan was in place with the mayor and council to actually remove the tents, and we're not sure who leaked that information, but we can speculate, I guess. But there's a little bit of new news with some people who definitely don't agree with what the mayor, the city, the fire department, and the VPD have been doing to decamp.
Yeah, I'm not, and this is a letter, a strongly worded letter from 60 employees within Vancouver Coastal Health, not Vancouver Coastal Health itself. But it sort of, makes you suspicious about maybe where this leak came from when you see this organization, which is crucial to the downtown east side and their role down there, saying they're not comfortable with this. I get a sense that the province in general and the NDP government is not comfortable with this decampment. Certainly, in my experience with some of the people within city government who were aligned with the NDP, they were very supportive of camps. So I would say that it's, the thing that drives me crazy is that, not so much the employees, but over the years, the power that Vancouver Coastal Health has had in general in policymaking in our city, mostly in a negative way. I'm sorry, but I feel like, okay, and I voted against this, which was the fences on Broad Street Bridge were put in because Vancouver Coastal Health came and said we have to do this. We have no wine in our grocery stores in Vancouver because Vancouver Coastal Health said this was a dangerous precedent and would lead to more alcoholism. And now we have them saying, the majority of people who seem to work in that area for Vancouver Coastal Health, saying that the decampment is not the right thing to do. And I think, well, where does safety begin and end for Vancouver Coastal Health? Okay, we're going to put fences up to keep people safe, but it's okay to have people on the downtown east side lighting themselves, like their tents, on fire, overdosing, people and people getting threatened. So that's okay. But but let's put a fence up on Burrard, keep to keep people safe. I just the logic, and then they were also supportive of all the pot shops that we had during the pre legalization. They supported a mass 180 illegal stores that were across the city, but they were against wine in grocery stores. I'm like, what is the logic of this organization? I would ask these questions in council. What is
And did
this?
you ever get an answer? Like, did you ever get
No,
any?
they would spin it. Talk about spin, the spin I would get from Patricia Daly and all these people. It's like, what? Okay, nonsense, nonsense. Mostly, I would be that, and I said that in council. I would say this is just ridiculous. This makes no sense, and so therefore would not support these things that they said. And I got a lot of trouble from people saying, "Oh, you can't say bad things about Vancouver Coastal Health. They do great work, but sometimes their political input is not necessary." Thank you very much. Please move on. Go do your job. I don't need you in the politics.
And why the politics? Like, why does it seem that VCH is more so than Fraser Health or Island Health or Northern Health? Or like, what is it about Vancouver Coastal that's different? Or how do the people within that get their jobs? Are they all medical professionals who are chiming in
I
here? Are they staff? Like, what is it?
I
Pardon my
I
novice.
no, I think there was a nanny state mentality under Vision Vancouver and followed by
Okay.
Kennedy Stewart that leveraged the role of Vancouver Coastal Health to push their agenda forward
Right.
by having them come and present to council, and it empowered them and gave them this ability for uh, Vision Vancouver at that time to change a lot of decisions, and because Vancouver
Right.
Coastal Health would say these things, and I'm like, well, what? This is staff have come with a report. They've done their due diligence, and Vancouver Coastal Health comes in and says something, and suddenly we're changing it. Where is the research on this? Why? And you can only
Right.
imagine. In my mind, it was definitely an agenda driven by the politicians at City Hall at that time, with the support of Vancouver Coastal Health. Now, Vancouver Coastal Health may not have known they were being leveraged politically, but I think they were, and I think that I was always shocked at how conservative, and I said this many times, and we talked about this, how conservative Vision Vancouver, who would be having considered a left of center party, and Kennedy Stewart and the NDP are when it comes to these issues. It's very, very curious to me how overly strict they are about our liberty and as humans, or they're certainly not libertarians. I get it. It's
Right.
the left wing thinks we're God. We need to oversee. We need to take care of you. You don't understand how to manage yourselves. We're going to take care of you. Don't. And it's like, well, actually, I have my free will. Thank you very much. I'd like to do some things on my own. I don't need government intruding on everything I do. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much. You mentioned the former mayor of Vancouver. More news this week of unpaid bills haunting that
I,
administration. Kennedy
I mean,
Stewart not paying his bills.
so bad, so bad. It's such a bad look on his part. Um, but I'm sorry. I've worked with politicians. I've been a politician, but there's certainly the one thing you do if you're a supplier. Note to any supplier for any party, politician ever: get your money in advance. Never assume you're going to get paid after the fact. Once the election's over, good luck. It happens again and again, especially if they lose. And it's completely against the rules, but eventually you're not going to get your money if you don't get it. So don't work for a politician without getting your money in advance. It
Mm,
happens. It's not just Canada, it happens all the time. And it's completely not cool. And the repercussions are not significant. They end up negotiating some crappy cents on the dollar, and these suppliers take it because they're just like, I can't afford lawyers. I'm not going to spend the same amount of money for $5,000 on $5,000 for $5,000. It's like it makes no mathematical sense. So get
yeah.
your money in advance. Don't ever trust a politician to pay you, especially during an election. And I just think it's
What's
sad
the latest?
that.
What's the latest outstanding bill? Do we know?
It's an advertising agency that did a bunch of media buying and strategy and media ad strategy for him. And I think they're on the hook for the actual. It looks like, I think, the ad by itself, they actually put it on their credit cards, which is
Wow.
a lot of money. So, I think that's crazy.
Wow.
I know.
That is crazy. Almost as crazy as how uh the pool structure went last year. That's not the best segue, but damn, man, I better have access to my pool this year. We were talking
As long as you're wearing a
first
bathing
world
suit, that
problems, but
doesn't.
right, right. Got to wear I wear an appropriate bathing suit. I'm not, genitalia not showing, also not swimming in jeans or a robe, which was another thing. I'm like, what? So what we're referencing there is news that aquatic center staff, so staff within the park board, long arms, right? Because it's a park board, are asking for the actual board to address the dress codes for pools
Yeah.
in and around Vancouver, which it's like, who's complaining about what now? Because I thought it was just about skimpy suits and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
y'all
well.
need to go to Spain, man. You like, oh, I don't want any, young one running around with their boobs out. It's like, guess what? In Spain, there are no tops on people. So
Yeah,
everybody's fine.
it's
Nobody dies. Like, it's just,
I don't know if you saw Charles Gautier's tweet, former BIA
yeah,
for DVBIA executive director or CEO, whatever his title was there, retired now, but he put a tweet out, a
yeah.
guy dressed in a full costume from the 1900s. Because that's immediately my mind jumped to that too. It's like, what is this silliness?
I know,
Really?
it's nuts. But I got to say, we talked about it last week with the lifeguards. And
Yeah.
then this week, we actually had one of our favorite followers on Twitter, George, retweet about this saying, look, someone's listening to you guys, because the city did put out a, hey, you want to be lifeguard? Now's the
Yeah.
time. And I actually, for a second, I thought maybe I'll just give up this media thing and go be a lifeguard. No. But it's a cool job, right? It's a cool job. And I hope they reopen all the pools and that everything is in place, and that, the beaches are safe and what have you. Like, the lifeguard thing is real.
First responders, come on, pay them what they deserve. Let them hire as many as we need. I want my family and any kids that I know. They don't report how many lives they save. They don't.
Right.
This data is not available, but I know through a source it's significant every year, especially on the beaches, and the pools as well. The big pools. The lifeguards do a really great service for our city, and I believe they are underpaid given their role, and they're not treated with the respect that as other first responders like firefighters, ambulance, nurses. It's unfortunate, and I think they should be, because we are a coastal city with a lot of beaches and we should have more pools, and
we should have more pools.
We rely on these young people generally to have this experience and be able to save lives in the moment. Talk about stress. I wouldn't want that job. No way. You can have it. I don't want it. First of all, I have to learn how to swim properly.
I was totally joking. Oh, I'm a very good swimmer, but that's the thing. I love to swim. And that Kitts Pool, I have basically been in Kitts Pool twice in the last 3 years. And it's been on my birthday both times, because I literally camped out to get a reservation for 45 minutes to go swimming with my kid twice in 3 years. That has got to end this year. It needs to be fully opened. It needs to be back to the way it was before. It needs to be seasons passes and people paying their money to get in there, and it should be affordable for families. And by the way, there should be places for people to park that they don't have to pay for 3 hours if they're only going swimming for 45 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot.
And when does it open? When does it go from? I don't understand why it doesn't go to October 1st. First of all, it ends Labor Day, which is ridiculous.
It does.
September can get so warm. And when does it open? When do these pools open?
May long weekend.
April's generally can be warm enough. It's pretty much warm enough right now to go swimming in Kitts. I think if it's turned
in a heated pool, for sure. There are days in the summer and fall that can be chilly, like today, and it's a perfect day to swim. It's not about sunbathing. It's about getting outdoors and using the facilities. We pay for these, and we paid for upgrades and repairs, and we just need to get out of our old, we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that really drives me
100%.
bonkers.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get to the Arbutus, the Kitts, social housing.
Yes, your favorite subject, because it's a tower in a neighborhood you don't.
You know what though? Here's the thing. I don't really mind. I've got friends who live in the area. I don't live far from there. I would be more comfortable with 5 smaller buildings that felt more like a community for the people that are going to live in them. My family, my mom, as a single parent with 2 small children, lived in what would be considered co-op housing, would live in what was subsidized or rent controlled to some degree. It was Blue Ridge Gardens in North Vancouver, actually, back in the day. And we had a great community there. It was 4 stories, but there were 5 of them in a community with a pool in the center, no lifeguard. Go figure. Back then,
Yes.
it was just up to us to take care of what was going on. But we knew most of the people in the complex, and you looked after each other's kids. You know, with
Hmm.
Greg and I as little kids, we had Peter Martin, who lived in the building across the way, that would eyeball us coming home from school and be like, "I'm right here, kids." No cell phones or anything, but that's how the community worked. And what feels like, and I was listening to Colleen Hardwick on with Mike Smith, and she was, you know, naming off a bunch of things that she really disagreed with in this particular building, that it's oversized and the units are super small, and then of course it's right across the street from
Sounds
a
great.
school, and then it's right across the street
Ah,
from
whatever.
a woman's shelter, who are escaping violence. And I don't know,
You know what? It's
I don't
also
know,
right
there's,
next to a giant terminus station of a giant train system that's going
yeah,
in an area that has it's I'm sorry, that school is a private school, it's a private Catholic school. You know, it's if it's it's not a problem. And where do people supposed to live? And then the other issue is that it's not that tall. It's 12 stories. Come on. It should be 50 stories at that at that station. 60. Let's go 100. I don't understand the problem here. It makes no sense. Now, if you want to talk about design and the whole Yaletown concept, for example, is the point tower with townhouses. The challenge we have, Jody, and then we have the Broadway plan, is that kits, like so many areas in the city, and I talk about this all the time, we've stopped doing community plans. We stopped
right.
talking to the community. So you look at Yaletown, the point tower, the townhouses, you've got a backyards. Basically, I live in one of these townhouses that has my door opens and there's a volleyball court and a communal area. 15 kids have grown up in this little 10 units in the townhouses and a
Yeah,
bunch in the tower,
I
300
love where you're
units.
living.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's a possibility, but nobody's planning this stuff. This is the problem. This ad hoc randomness is what makes people angry. Kits
Let me
has
jump
not
in there,
had its
because
upgrade yet.
there are towers in kits, and that's the point that I was trying to make off the top. Is,
Yes.
do I think there should be one big fat pile right there because so many people lacked the forethought of actually creating a little bit more community density, where we've seen supportive housing, which is what this is technically called, supportive housing,
Mm-hmm.
um, peppered throughout all over the west side. You never hear about it, you never talk about it, because it works. It's good. It doesn't have like 200 people lined up to say how much they don't want it to happen, or, you know, the other side of it lining up to scream nobody cares about anybody anymore. And it's just this fighting that happens, and then nothing gets built. And then you need a behemoth where a bunch of people get piled on one another without the amount of support that's what I get out of it. My mushy middle is, it feels like there aren't enough supports for what is being built. And if there were, instead of a 15-story building with however many units in, why not 6
No,
moderate sized
no,
buildings with better supports in? Why, George? Why is
it's
there not enough for
better
you?
to have a larger building to create the support
Why?
system than a smaller one, if you actually put the proper support systems in, because you can control it better. You can have more people in there. Staffing, you put the cost of staffing in a smaller building becomes insanely expensive. You have 2 buildings. Each building has to have the same number of staff as you'd have in a taller building. It makes no sense.
Really?
It's the math.
That
Yes, of
doesn't make
course.
sense.
A lot of
What?
these
What do you mean,
places are
of
built.
course? More people,
Yes,
more
because
people
they're
in a
generally
building
it's
and
a
fewer
whole
staff?
because the process. If you look, I live in Yaletown. There are more of these kinds of housing units, and they're almost all towers around within, like, literally all around my building. Every building almost
Yeah.
around my
How's that
building
working
is
for you?
social. It's fine, actually. The
Oh, is
buildings
it?
are fine. It's what happens at the park two blocks away that isn't taken care of, or the safe injection site where they allow people to sleep on the sidewalks and don't keep them moving. Come and get your injection and get the hell out of here. What are you hanging out here for? Stop living on our sidewalk. Don't go to the park and hang out there and do your drugs there. This is what happens when you have.
I
That's
think you're
another
hitting
issue,
on,
though.
but I think you're hitting on what, if I had, and I can't speak for Colleen Hardwick or the people who are arguing the other side of this, to your point, but I believe that the point they would try and make is that if you have too many people without the support in one spot, you're going to end up with that happening at the park across the street. And in this case, the park across the street is an elementary school. And I'm not arguing that there shouldn't be supportive housing. There must be. We're behind on it. And that's the point I was trying to make, is there are towers in Kitsilano. There are 6, 8, and 10-story towers peppered through the community, and you don't even notice them because fit in.
I know, but
And it's
this
like, would a
area,
60-story or a 100-story tower make sense there? I don't think so. I think
once
that's,
you're over 12 stories, you don't even notice the height. You know, it
I
doesn't
think
really
people
matter.
would, I think people would because the services in the neighborhood are not there. Like it's just not, it just doesn't exist
But
because of the
most of these
planning. And
social
that I'll go
housing
back to
units, these units
what you were
usually have
saying.
zero tolerance, right? So if you want to live in these units, these buildings, they have zero tolerance. So in the buildings that are managed around where I live, they are generally run by church groups quite often. They are developed and built by them, several of them. They have
Yeah.
it's a zero tolerance rule. One next to me is half social housing normal, the other half is core need, people who are drug addicts,
Right.
alcoholics, they've got in there. And the whole building, though, is zero tolerance. You're not allowed to drink in your suite anywhere in that building. It's not allowed.
So where do they go to drink?
Well, they get kicked out if they come in drunk. They're not allowed to be there. They have strict rules. You break the rules, you're out. You're out. And so they
I
follow the
have to
rules
point out though,
as
I
much
have
as
to
they
point out
can.
though, George, I never once mentioned who was moving in. I mentioned the quality of the living space and environment and the numbers of people, not who's moving in.
Yeah.
Because we've been the unwanted, the single mother with two small children who works all the time and is, stretched to make ends meet. That was a reality for us in 1977. There are many good people who just need a leg up, and I think that it's really important that we get on it and make housing not just affordable but livable, and livable for small families and livable for
Mhm.
that niche that can't afford a great expanse. We need affordable spaces for people who are living at or below the poverty line to get a leg up, and hopefully this will start down the right path and instead of lead to Armageddon, which so many people are predicting that it will, the people in the NIMBY side of things. Because I'm not in the NIMBY. I just like, it
I think
feels
if
like
you,
something's being rammed into a neighborhood where it could be more, as you said, planned.
and I think there are
Planned.
examples where that's true. The unit, that building down in Olympic Village, where it was supposed to be a seniors development, and
Yes.
in the last minute, the city have decided to switch it to make it half
The
seniors.
Marguerite building.
Yeah, Marguerite Ford building,
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
never actually gone and smashed a champagne bottle against it to celebrate this building that was named after her, former city councilor.
Yeah.
They wasn't plan. It was a terrible planning process. They had it for
Yeah.
seniors. Then they said, no, let's put half the people in there that are people who are drug addicts and without any support system, without staffing, without a, same entrance, all these things. You can't do that. You can't do that. That
I
makes
worked
no
at
sense.
Breakfast Television across the street. I worked at BT. I watched that building before I saw everything get raised. I saw that building be built. And then I watched the first 4 years, 3.5 years of its existence. And every single time I looked out the window, there was an ambulance in front of it. Every single time. It was a nightmare building. And hopefully the lessons have been learned from that
Mhm.
moving forward. Let's hope that that's a
Yes.
fact. I'm sure we'll be talking more about this as we continue on UnSpun, where one more thing I want to just shoehorn in here is the
Yes.
showdown at the legislature. Kind of sounds like you and I today, George. Feisty in the legislature. Holy cow. Soft
Yeah.
on crime. Soft on crime premier.
They're on
Oh,
to something. I think they've taken the playbook from ABC in Vancouver a little bit to try and use that. They saw that opportunity that ABC in Vancouver played that card here pretty successfully. Obviously, the data, the polling is showing that people are feeling unsafe across this province. So the BC United Party, as it is now called, formerly BC Liberals, are going hard on that. And it was
yeah.
interesting. I saw Mike Farnworth. He went on a mad streak in there.
Oh, yeah. He was
Just really,
pissed.
he's good. He's amazing. When he goes on, he's pretty impressive to watch. That guy is. You show your experience in the legislature in question period when you can just kind of go at it. But I will say, and I've talked about this, the decisions that he was talking about, he was arguing that it was the BC United's fault that these things, that the reason we're in this situation. Uh,
Yeah.
Excuse me. I want to just point back to decisions that were made by the NDP in the early 90s about the deinstitutionalization. That was an NDP decision. Many of the criminal justice system decisions were NDP decisions in the early 90s. We talk about this all the time. These are decisions that were made not only provincially, but federally on the housing front 30 years ago that are killing us now and killing people because we have
Yeah.
50,000 units that weren't built. We have crime on the streets. We have drug addicts. We have no institutions because we don't want institutions because these governments decided these were bad and now and
Yeah.
didn't have a solution. And then the Liberals got in afterwards. And sure, you can blame the Liberals or now the BC United for coming in after the NDP made these terrible decisions and not figuring it out because I don't
Reversing them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think you didn't think what would happen, and it did. And here we are now with homeless people living on the streets, uh, arguments about these buildings and kits, people
Repeat
dying of
offenders,
fentanyl overdose,
pro-
repeat
prolific
offenders,
offenders.
prolific
This
offenders,
is what
break-ins
sparked the
everywhere,
argument.
no, not enough police, blah 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 blah. Goes
Yeah,
on and on and on and on.
prolific offenders is what really sparked the
Whoever was in
debate in the
power
legislature. Yeah.
30 years ago is to blame for this. A generation ago, decisions were made, and that was the NDP in BC that have led us to this challenge here that we have on so many fronts in British Columbia. So don't point your finger at just one party. Point your finger at successive governments who've made terrible decisions, and now it's going to take 30 years to fix, if anybody ever has the guts to do it.
I don't think we can go on from here other than to say you got to follow us on social media for more like this from George-Affleck. George
Underscore
Affleck at George_Affleck on Twitter. That's where you find our lovely George-Affleck. At UnSpun Podcast on Twitter. unspunpodcast.com is where you sign up. I'm at Jody Vance on Twitter and on Instagram, Jody. And you're on TikTok, George. It's super fun. Let's mention that.
Yeah, experimenting with more of my marketing side than not politics. But
I love your marketing side, though. There's some great tips on there.
Yeah.
There are. I mean it sincerely. We didn't plan to mention it.
It's a complicated platform. I'll tell you, it's not as easy as Twitter and Facebook. It's way more complicated to post this stuff. But you know that.
Correct. Well, you come up in my For You feed. I like it.
All right.
Like it.
I'm for you.
Enjoy your week, crazy people.
Bye.
Bye.